Hello and welcome to another 5 minute first impressions. I'm Anthony Mallock and this is reviewyour.website reviewing sangralguitars.com. So let's have a look. And it's taking a second to connect and it's loading up now. I had a look at this website briefly and I had a few mistakes or kind of I got stuck on my words, so I decided to start the review again. It's worth noting that the first time I loaded the website, this image was very slow to load, and the entire page in general actually was very slow to load. A lot of things were coming in bits and pieces, and it actually took maybe 3 seconds, I would say, perhaps longer, for the website to load. So in that respect, that's quite poor performance. I think you could do a lot better than that. I would suggest using an image optimizer. If you have, I don't know what type of image these are, I'm not going to go into that, but if they're JPEG or PNG, you can use image optimizers that will reduce the size of the files, especially this particular image. There's a lot of black here, and some image optimizers can for images with a large amount of the same tone, you can do quite well optimizing these images. You might be able to reduce it by down to a fraction of what it was originally. The next thing you could do is perhaps look at the use of a CDN. So I'm could perhaps recommend Cloudflare or something along those lines. You could even try just to test it, just to see if it has much of effect if you upload your images on Imager or one of these websites, just to see, because they're going to be using a CDN and they're going to be using a lot of caching stuff. So if you do it there and then try and reload it, it should increase the page load time. So let's okay, so the first thing that's hitting me, this is a very strong image that's coming up here. I do like the fact that you're going for a fairly minimal design, but I think this image is taking away. It's almost like you have two kind of header blocks, that the big image it wants to be the main header of the page, yet you still have this other white kind of background area here that also wants to be the image or the header. I don't particularly like the font you're using up here. I think it looks very amateur. I think it looks almost Comic Sans like. Something about that just isn't screaming professional website. And the rest of it actually, so far is actually looking quite good, and that's really taking away from the design of the website. If you're going for something simple and minimal like you have here, the kind of style of font that suits that, you're going to want to go for a lightweight, and you're going to go for a very thin line. So I would perhaps look at that. I would go sans serif as well. So there's a lot of options out there. Perhaps try one of the Roboto lights. I kind of like them myself. I think they go quite well in these kind of styles. Ignoring the font, I'll move on. I like the header. I like it's a very simple kind of logo or header image you have here, and I like the fact that it says what you are. It tells you, you do guitars. That's a very important thing. A lot of business websites or perhaps small business websites don't actually say what they do, that they have a brand or they have a name, and they don't actually tell the user, the viewer, what they actually supply. So that's very good. And the fact that it's there, it's straight up front. I don't understand what your logo is. Is it a bird or a helmet or something? But it is definitely a professional looking logo. It looks very crisp and clean, which is nice. Perhaps I'd try and get something that actually shows a guitar in it or something like that, but that's entirely up to you. So let's go across here. Nice, good use of white space here, making good use of the page. I like that. I perhaps even make this a lot smaller. Now I'll mention the text down here in a minute, and that will echo this the margins and the gutter sizes out here. But before we get there, this header, I do like the little animation that goes underneath. I like the way the line bounces back. It's a nice little touch. It's subtle. It's not, animation sometimes can be too much on a lot of websites and just look cheesy. In this case, you're going for a very minimal design, which means that you can accent that with nice little animations like this. And this, in this case, this underline is working very well. What I don't like is the drop down. So only one of these is a drop down. First of all, there's nothing for us to know that it's actually a drop down. We don't know before we go on it, before we mouse over if something is going to drop down. Personally, I'm not a big fan of drop downs, but also I don't like the color you're going for, and it's the same font and it's just not working for me at all. People know how drop downs work. I just particularly don't like them. I think you could do a little bit better on that. I think design wise, it's not a very nice grey. It doesn't have any warmth to it. It doesn't have any character to it. It's essentially, is there a very slight shadow around that box? Am I imagining that? No, I think there is. That's nice, but it seems completely disconnected from the actual product's button, which is, something quite common for drop-down menus, is that the menu stays attached to the button or has some sort of link to the button other than this left align. And where the left align, you're aligning this box, this left edge here of the box is aligned with, I assume, the left edge of the div that this product's text is in. However, the product's text is centered within that div, which means that there's this half width offset, which actually throws this off. It doesn't make it seem connected to the product. So what I would do is I'd actually get rid of the drop down altogether and just have it click somewhere else, or I would try and review that and not have it seem so separate to the rest of the page content. Right, just while I'm on that, another piece of advice I got years ago from actually an art teacher was that the human eye is looking for coincidence all the time. So if there's something that seems very close, we like to pretend our brain makes that jump between it being very close and perfectly aligned. If it's very far, it seems interesting. And if you're, for example, the overlap of the guitar here over this line, if the guitar was just meeting this line, it wouldn't work. Or if it was ever so slightly overlapping the line, it wouldn't work. In fact, this I'd even accentuate a little bit more. What I mean, where I'm getting at with this, is that when we mouse over the products, the line here underneath the ST500 Cheyenne, I think that's how you pronounce it, sorry, I'm not too sure, this line, the top of this or the bottom of the other one, is almost perfectly in line with the white line in this image, and that's, my brain is trying to make a connection between that, and it's throwing this box into a weird kind of juxtaposition. This one, in fact, is, this border here and the border of the black and the white is doing the same thing. So just something to keep in mind. The next thing, the checkout box here. Okay, so again, same thing's happening. I don't like the color that's happening here. I don't like the font either. Not a massive fan of that animation either. I just have the checkout there all the time. It seems like your checkout is just kind of out of place, whereas the rest of this content is really nicely spaced. You've got equal spacing at the top and the bottom, and equally over this side we've got equal space on the top and the bottom. Yet over here then we have your checkout, which is just kind of, seems plonked there for no real reason. It looks like you have a nice lot of room here. I would actually just, put it down here beside, in line with the rest of these. Even if you want to make a difference between menu and, actual, information, you could keep this horizontal bar while it's in the box with the rest. What does the search? Okay, the search is very faint and it doesn't stand out. It doesn't follow the same design as the other pop-ups, so that's another thing to keep in mind. There's something about this pop-up that just isn't working. I wish I could explain it to you better. There's a white border on the left side of it, which isn't right. Perhaps add a drop shadow or something behind it just to make it stand out, because it's just not sitting there, or it's just not sitting properly. I might have something to say later on if I can think about it, but we'll move on for now. So moving on to the body. Okay, so I see what you're doing here. You've got the big main header, and this is your big main header content, and then below we've got text to the left, text to the right, and it's alternating text to the right, image to the left. Okay, so it's good. I like the way you're following a common theme throughout, which is good. However, there's a few things I think we could improve on. So going for solid black on white doesn't work very well to the human eye. I would one of the tricks that people use very often is, rather than going solid black, you go for a softer black. So we tone it down ever so slightly. So if we open, for example, that's downloads. I'm still getting used to this computer, very sorry about that now. If we open the developer tools, and we have a look at the black on, let's pick an element like this button here, and we go, why did I go to developer tools, inspect the element, we should see the color. So we have the background color, and you're gone for a solid black, which is RGB 000. If we click on this here, we should be able to see the color picker. Why is that not working? Let's try it here. Okay, so if we see the color picker, we can drag it around. We can change. You can notice the color of these span drop cap 3 are changing as we go along. Now, you had that set to 000, which is quite harsh in the eyes. In nature, there is no such thing as full black, so we don't expect it, and it's quite harsh on our eyes. We're not used to it. What you can do, though, is you can actually warm up the black. We'll still think it's black, but it won't actually be black. One of the tricks we can do is move this across to a yellow or a red or browny orangey color, and we just drag it ever so slightly in here. Now, the fact that I'm changing this, your eye is going to notice it, because we notice change in colors. But if you had reloaded this website, I'm going to move it. Where we go? Let's pick that one for now. So if we reloaded this page and you had this color set up rather than the full-on black, you're also going to notice the contrast between this black and here. But let's say you went with this black for all of the background. Your eyes would straight away pretend that this is black. You're going to think that this is black. However, it's going to seem a lot easier on the eye, and it's going to look a lot smoother. It's going to actually look a lot more professional, in my opinion, and you can actually do that for all of the black. So there's a lot of black on this page, on the background of this, your logo, all the icons, all of the text. You can set this color to a warmer black for all of those blacks, and your whole page is going to seem a lot smoother, a lot nicer. It's going to blend a lot nicer. So that's one tip. I would definitely experiment with that. It'll make a huge difference, I guarantee you. So that's color. While that's there, I'm actually just going to refresh the page to get rid of that, just because we want to stick to the original design. Okay. So just while I notice that actually your little logo here, it works good on a high definition screen. I really wonder, is that going to work on a lower definition screen? I wonder what the 16 by 16 pixel version looks like. Anyway, we'll move on. Another thing that I reference a lot in my videos is the use of line length. Can make a big difference to the readability. So the optimum readability for any line length of anything that you're reading, the eye expects to read 1.5 alphabets across, 1.5 alphabets across, and then it expects to jump down. Anything longer than that, and I'm estimating that it's about here, but anything longer than that, our eyes actually get fatigued. Our brain can't handle everything all on the same line, and we actually can't understand. So I've been on this website, I don't know how long I've been recording at the moment, but I've read The Tone Revolution, I've read A New Guitar, A New Sound, but I haven't read any of this text because it is just far too long for it to get into my brain. So to demonstrate, if I go to inspect and we should be able to open it up here. So here's your paragraph. If we edit the HTML in your paragraph, so we see that you have your Dropcat 3. I'm going to keep that there, right? But I'm going to delete all of this. In fact, I'm just going to drag this over a little bit further. Give us a little bit more room. Why is that going over there? And I'm going to bring this up here, and I'm going to delete all of that. And I'm going to go back, right? And as we go back further, cornerstone, we'll delete that as well. Oops, what have I deleted? It's going off the side of my window. Span. That's the end of the span, right? So I'm just going to delete this, and we're going to include an alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And I'm going to copy half of that again, and we're going to add it at the end. That is the optimum line length. Anything more than that actually gets quite difficult. So watch what happens when I actually set this as your line length. So your line all of a sudden has become half of what it was set. Now, if we make your website big, you can notice straight away how it's got to be a lot shorter. Now, there's a number of ways you can do that. First of all, you can make the font larger. You could make your line spacing or your letter spacing larger, but that might not give you the effect that you're liking. You could increase the margins on the left here. So your whole website actually works. If we, let's say, if we make this a bit smaller, the whole website works at this width. Okay, maybe not ideally, but it does work. So if you made your font twice as large, it would fit pretty much in this area here per line, and then you would still keep a lot more white space if you could add, let's say, whatever the difference is between this size screen and this size screen. You could give yourself a lot more white space. Everything would breathe a little bit more, and your font would be larger, your line lengths would be shorter, it would be easier for people to read, it'll get into their brains a lot faster. So I'd experiment with that. I think, again, that would make a big difference. So once again, I'm just going to refresh. All right, so we've covered that part. Let's move down. I like the subtle little horizontal rule. That is nice. So once again, the black background would make it a big difference if we made that warmer. So another thing that we try and keep common is on a page, we try and keep your call to actions unique. And the idea there is that as a user is using your page, they get used to what you want them to click on, and then their attention is drawn. If they want to actually click on something, their attention will be drawn to whatever they need to click quicker. They won't have to think about it. So my brain at the moment is looking at featured guitars here, and I'm thinking that's a button. Because it is a rectangle, it's got ever so slightly rounded edges, it's got a solid black background and white text, which is very similar to the more information button down here. So I would definitely try and keep those separate. The same thing is happening with your drop T here or your drop text here. I would go for just a much larger font. I would go for a much bolder font, and I would go for perhaps larger and bolder would make enough. Get rid of the black background and keep it the same color. I mean, we're used to having large headers. The other thing as well is that this is a header for this whole section below here that I'm just figuring out now. You have featured guitars. To me at the moment, this seems like a header just for this section. So it seems like it's describing everything between this horizontal rule and this horizontal rule. The other thing as well is this one here is unnecessary. It's adding a lot of, it's breaking things up where they don't need to be broken up. But I try and distinguish this as the header for the entire area. You could do that in a number of ways. Excuse me. You could do that in a number of ways. We could make it actually just, if you make it a lot larger and you had it break some UI difference. You're going to need some UI difference between this header and the rest of the content here. But I will move on from that for the moment. These areas here, the next thing that I'm seeing, I'm accidentally after clicking on that. I'm very sorry. Let's stop and go back. So the next area that I'm seeing is these black background images are standing out so strong. I know it's very hard to get a white background image on these kind of things without having them getting washed out. But if you're going to do that, there's a very strong border between the top and the bottom of the image, and that has to either it has to perfectly align with things. So, let's say the top one would have to perfectly align, the bottom, either perfectly align it or have it very different so we know that it's not a block. And what I'm seeing is this bottom line here is almost perfectly aligned with the bottom of the more information button, which again is doing that mind trick that I was talking with above. Up here it's doing the same thing. Again, that's not enough for it to be different. Same thing's happening here again. So what I would do is distinguish this area from this area, make it very obvious that they're different. I think the problem is that you have this black background on the images, that it's just the black background is so strong. It's a very strong UI element. Overall though, we've got rid of that cheesy font at the top. It's working a lot better down here. There's a much nicer font. It looks a lot better. Okay, so we've talked about these. I like the alternating left and right, but there's something funny about the images kind of overlapping. I'd also experiment with having the difference, the margin at the bottom here between your horizontal rule and the margin at the top of this one to the horizontal rule. I'd experiment with perhaps making them equal. It might give you a little bit more room in this area of the page and separate out these areas a little bit nicer. And we'll move on. I like the animation that the images pop in with. It's quite nice. That image now with the white background actually sits very nice with the text. We don't notice this issue with the alignment at the top or the bottom with anything. It makes a big difference. So, if you could do it, and if you can manage, if it'll work well to either reshoot the guitars or Photoshop out the black, or have another version of the images with the white background, I think it would work a lot better. So the little animations here look quite nice. I've seen these in a few other websites. It doesn't really make sense to have bars for these kind of stats, but if it's a design stat or if it's a design decision and it works for you, you go for it. The embedded video is quite nice, but again we have this issue with alignment going on down the bottom. Your logos are very nice. I like the fact that you have the logo and it's written underneath. I'd perhaps even make the logos larger again. It's very obvious that they're buttons. That's very nice. In fact, I like the colors that you're fading to, but again, I'd warm it up a lot better. Your footer, once again, okay, we've gone back to this font down here that I just really don't like. But overall, the foot is quite nice. I'd add something else here. It just seems kind of bland at the bottom, but overall, it's got the information that you need, I guess. The thought of the day. I don't know if I'm a big fan of that, but another design decision. What I would make sure is that your contact details, we're missing an email here at the bottom. So if anybody wants to get in contact, I assume you're trying to sell these guitars. If somebody wants to get in contact for more information, and they end up getting to the bottom of the page, don't make them scroll all the way back up, or they could miss this button. There's no reason you couldn't have all your contact details here, your whatever your phone number. I know you have your address here, but you could definitely put it, and your phone number actually, but you could definitely have an email address there as well. It would make a big difference. So I hope this review was helpful. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.